Yeah, if we make it like 15 minutes, 20 minutes tops is about where I'm at on timing.
All right, hello and welcome to the 4th episode of Crypto Chat Live. I'm your host, Ridman, and together with the other hosts, I'm happy to have Colin Cantrell, the founder and lead developer of Nexus, with us here tonight. Colin, I take it you are a little bit familiar with our format. We'll ask you for an introduction of yourself and, a little bit about Nexus, and then later on we'll have more of a Q&A for whatever time you have available for us tonight.
Okay, I guess a basic introduction. I'm just kind of an entrepreneur, software engineer. Done a lot of work with hardware, development alternative energy systems. Grew up in the aerospace type industry with my father involved in that. Eventually created Nexus, which kind of started as CoinShield, which was just basically destroying the scams out at the time. And then it's kind of evolved into a series of projects that kind of unified together, because what Nexus means is a series of connections between two or more things. So in a way, if we look at our planet and we look at how everybody's a little bit divided, it's a way to kind of help bring people together and also provide a currency backbone, new economic backbone, so that we can basically just, look at the system and say, hey, we look at this, I'm not too pleased with it. It seems like democracy and monarchy and, oligarchy control and all these different things are not really in our best interest. So in, light of bringing a positive change to the world, let's just change our minds a little bit. Let's just change our direction. Let's build ourselves some tools and let's say, hey, we don't need to worry about what's going on in the world. We don't need to worry about the crap. We don't want to have our hands dirtied with it. We have a new way we can make things in a positive light by simply just changing our focus and creating something new. So that's where Nexus really comes in, is it's kind of a foundation to building a new framework for all types of things that we may need in, a functioning society, democratic contracts, representatives, developers, and other types of financial systems as well. So, all of those combined together will allow us that ability, I guess, in a nutshell.
Great.
Okay. I've got a couple of questions to do with, because I read the white paper. I know obviously the Nexus is for you, it's a long-term plan. Very interested in the decentralized internet and the way the ground uplink or ground uplinks are basically going to function. Because the way I understand it, obviously, people at first are going to operate ground uplinks as if in a similar fashion to a masternode or a miner or something like that. And then I also heard something about a contract to eventually, so you could basically buy your own satellites once obviously the project gets ahead enough to get some cube satellites in orbit.
Yeah. So, I mean, the way we're designing this is to have it something that's kind of like, okay, so instead of having the whole telecommunications network, which we operate on, owned by a central point, and then everybody leases rights to it, we can kind of basically out of box have hardware that allows people to form that network themselves. So the ground stations are, they can act kind of as a node. Now there'll be a trust node is what they're called. The master nodes are kind of, you apply this gross cost to it. Trust nodes, as far as we developed, it's a mathematical validation of your trust. So it kind of shows your track record. It's, it creates also relationships with other nodes that say, well, you got your reputation here, and you also have your interactions, which create, basically how people know to interact with you on kind of a subjective private level. But ultimately, that's a way to kind of replace the pyramidal structure of masternode types and make it more time-based, which means, everybody has equal access to time. So depending on how you choose to use that time is what's going to pretty much build your reputation on the software levels. So the ground stations will connect with the cube satellites, and then there will be client devices that will connect between the ground stations and form routes. So the satellites are mainly going to be used for orbital caching, because, we're going to want to cache the more sensitive data. On the blockchain, we don't want to have everything completely on the ground, and we don't have everything completely in space, because that's inefficient. We can use the ground for certain purposes, and we can use the low Earth orbit for certain purposes. So, when you have a signal, right, from here to the US to Europe, like you guys are in Europe right now, we have to go across what are called the transcontinental cables. They're fiber optic cables that are strung across the ocean, and they're heavily unreliable because, anything can happen under the ocean, and you've got this very, very long distance to travel. So satellites can bridge out in certain points, but for the gross amount of the internet, it's still run on these cables. So that's because you can't really send, wireless signals across the ocean and expect them to penetrate very far, because, the air and certain frequencies are going to kind of disallow its penetration range. And that's where, we get other bandwidth complications. But in a nutshell, these ground stations will allow access to this constellation that people get their incentive where they can act as their own gateway, and they'll ping that across continents. But even if you look at within a continent, like let's look at the European road systems, all roads lead to Rome, or, even the interstate system in the United States, you look at it, they're almost like giant wires. So why can't we have these client devices connect through and almost form wireless wires through highways of semis that support this? And so these basically gives people more opportunity to start providing the services themselves. Okay, I'm going to buy a ground station or a mobile ground station, which can connect to the LEO orbits, which will allow me direct access with the highest bandwidth possible. And I'll be able to have, my nodes running on that, so other people connect through me, and I provide them routes, and they provide me, let's say, some sort of credit system, which we've been designing it with some sort of use of time as the monetary resource, and also the NXS token from your trust. So those two things combined together give your incentive, but you need a cryptocurrency backbone on this, because not everybody's going to be incentivized to do this. Who's going to want to run a ground station? Everyone's going to run on client devices, and then it's going to overload the network and create concentrations and densities and RF interference. So those need that kind of acts as the incentive system, along with the cube satellites, which will be basically put up on vector rockets. And we're planning on getting those airborne, or at least a few of them, in 2018, and continue to build them further and further and open source all the designs, so that people will be able to have access to these satellites that may be in orbit already and say, hey, I want to buy this satellite and I want to own this one. It'll be kind of almost just like purchasing a server in low Earth orbit, but you'll also be providing route access, and you'll be able to do whatever you want with it as well. So it provides the decentralized internet in one perspective, but it also provides us a whole other set of useful tools that can come from the communication and connection that we can form from that, which is what Nexus is about.
Okay, cool. So how far along are you? Because I've seen with the satellites, I'm pretty sure you've launched a full-size test rocket already?
Yeah, so we launched a full-size test, and then going actually tomorrow to our next first payload test. So that's the Block 002. I think the rockets are just about ready to start commercial application in 2018, in which we're going to be working with Vector on what's called Galactic Sky. Now that's basically they're working with Citrix, which is software-defined virtual machines in low Earth orbit. So what people are going to be able to do is they'll be able to rent time on the space. Now we're helping beta test it, and we're also providing a use case for people to realize, hey, well, back up your blockchains on here, which is going to give Nexus, a first immutable access essentially to back up our blockchain on there and start using some of those imaging systems and start proving how it works and connecting those with some of our ground stations that work with theirs to eventually be designing our own satellites, which are pretty easy to get these days. There's, a huge market with cube satellites, which is one reason Vector is penetrating that market, because all these little CubeSats can only just hop on big rockets, which, back in the days, it took 6 months to build that CubeSat, but now it's so fast that like the big rockets just aren't doing it anymore. So the phase 2 to continue on that point is to build those satellites and send them up ourselves by purchasing Vector rockets. And that's going to be kind of, I'd say 2019 is what I'd hope to be able to get that towards, and also, testing phases in between them. But, the timelines is contingent on how far that development is based mainly on, the production of these rockets, how quickly we start getting them, and also how quickly we can get it together to be putting these cube satellites up ourselves. But the first phase is going to be really starting to emerge in 2018.
Right, okay. So somebody's asked in the chat. So where's obviously all the money coming from? I'm aware that basically there's no pre-mine on Nexus, but there's a very small fee per block.
Well, that's the coin shield system. So we don't want to get the coin shield, mixed up.
Oh, right, okay.
Right. So that's the developer commission was designed back in the days for, how coin shield was operated, but this one here, it's basically they're going to be in what are called democratic contracts that are voted on by people. So right now we don't have the funds to buy rockets, but in the future, there's going to be contracts that people will be able to validate themselves in order to create these rockets. And that's going to be able to help them start to choose, well, hey, do we want to buy this right now, or do we think there's other things that should be useful? So those contract systems will allow these types of things to evolve on the market. And that is basically something that's necessary in the future development of the system.
Right. Okay. So economically, how will that function then with the rockets? What's the incentive?
What's the incentive?
So the incentive for the satellites and for the because obviously the funding, obviously there is a massive incentive there. Like I would love to help to fund it any way that I could, but obviously there's going to be people that.
Question is pretty easily answered to yourself. What's the incentive of a decentralized internet?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, you could answer that question pretty easily yourself.
So there's,
I think anybody can, obviously deriving your interest.
Yeah, definitely. So I suppose that what I mean then is we definitely need a way for people like me to help the project further along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, that's where the democratic contracts are very, very necessary because, there needs to be a validation of this. Otherwise, there's not going to be as much that can be, how should I say it, demonstrated in the positive qualities of it. And the world needs to have a voice. So if you guys believe that cube satellites are not anything that's worthwhile, then you won't vote on a contract for that to be happening.
I've got some questions here on YouTube. A question from Limbo Drones. He's asking, what does a satellite cost?
Right now, they're around 10 to 15,000 as far as I understand on the satellites. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't built any of them yet, but they're actually fairly cheap. But you guys are going to have to stop so many of the repetitive questions right now. I have about 1 minute left, so you might want to ask some of the ones that you're going to be, how should I say it, wanting to have prevalence.
Can you discuss about your conference that is coming up in September?
Yeah, so the conference that we're doing in September, we're doing it to bring a lot of people together from a lot of different types of industries. And it's the first one. It's actually going to be on our 3-year anniversary, which essentially is going to be kind of a celebration party. And it's going to be also providing a lot of other people the opportunity to meet together from around the world and to have question and answers, have some roundtable events, provide some more team transparency, and also, provide other people the opportunity to see the real world applications of the blockchain and how it's really going to be helping the world.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm hopefully I'll be joining you at that that conference.
I would love for you to come to that conference and maybe, some more of these questions that you guys are asking right now. There will be a little more available time. You can ask it in first person, face to face, which should provide, some more clarity to certain things. I know some people have been asking some pretty interesting questions about it, but I mean, the bottom line is satellites are going to be providing our ability to cross, the different continents, and people will be deciding that that's what they want or not. But that's what our plan is right now, and it's going to be happening with Galactic Sky at no cost to us. And the phase 2 plan is always being evolved, and it's based on democratic opinion. So when it comes is when it will come, and that's when I think most of that discussion will be the most fruitful.
Given that you're on a very limited time schedule here, is there anything specific you would like to say while you are here? Is there anything you are very excited about as it comes to Nexus that you want to have said that you haven't said already?
I'm really excited for this Tritium release. I've spent a lot of time coding it and put a lot of time in developing the framework for it. So the new wallet 3.0 is coming out. It's going to be doing a lot of really awesome things to the protocol, including some different type of cryptographic login systems based in the blockchain and a lot of other things. We'll be releasing that white paper really soon, so you guys should prepare for that.
Awesome.
We had a question from a viewer. They asked, are you guys blockchain based on Ethereum, or do you have your own independent blockchain?
Okay, this is the last one I can answer, but yeah, we are our own blockchain. We've been basically since 2014, we've developed. So It's the network was launched September 23rd, and it's been written from a pure coin code base and expanded upon in order to provide a new framework and architecture that's going to help blockchains really be capable of what we're describing as far as connecting and having full worldwide transaction volume, and also the ability to have more secure contracting systems that are more applicable with more real world use cases. And that's what the Tau update series is called. So that's coming in the next few years. Tritium is the first step.
All right. I'd like to thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much too.
Too bad we couldn't have you around further today.
Yeah, I apologize.
But I'm sure
It's kind of a tight time frame, but I appreciate
yes.
you guys working with it as it is.
I'm sure you'll stay in contact a little bit with Dennis, and maybe we can have you on when you have the time for it.
We shall see.
Thank you, man. Enjoy.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Good luck with your conference, man. We will definitely be watching and share your information.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
All right. You take care.